file a lawsuit if Kasich signs these election bills, and what would the basis be?
Well, we very well might, and I directed my my law director to review the legislation and look at the applicable voting rights statutes and see if we have any legal recourse. And so he's reviewing that. That's right. And we've done that before. We are the only county in Ohio, and I'm very proud of this, we are the only county in Ohio that when they tried to change the election rules at the last minute in 2012, of course there was a lawsuit over that, and there was only one county in Ohio that filed an amicus brief that we filed in federal court. And sometimes, for those of you that are lawyers, are there any lawyers here besides me? Unfriendly crowd. Sometimes you wonder in a big federal case if an amicus brief is a friend of the court brief, and it doesn't mean you're a party to the lawsuit, but it means that you have something to say about a lawsuit, and you can file it on either side of the contest. And we filed on behalf of the people that were challenging those last-minute restrictions. And sometimes you wonder if, in a big, complicated piece of litigation, if the judges actually read amicus briefs. But we know they did because they actually cited our amicus brief as one of the reasons that the Sixth Circuit threw out those voting restrictions. That wasn't the first time that we've on the official side, we've felt that it was appropriate to get involved in these kinds of questions. Back in 2011, when Secretary of State Husted was trying to prevent local boards of elections from sending out vote-by-mail applications, we disagreed very strongly with that, spoke out about it very strongly, and as you probably know, my office ended up appropriating money through our county council to do that independently of our Board of Elections, which Secretary Husted took issue with, and then we ended up meeting and negotiating a compromise which did not allow for the mailing out of absentee ballot applications in 2011, but it did in 2012, not just in Cuyahoga County, but statewide, which I think was a big step forward in voter access, and I'm proud to have been a part of that. I think it was an example of standing up for doing the right thing on behalf of voters and getting a good result for the whole state. So we're going to look at doing it again because these restrictions, which I think are outrageous and unnecessary and totally motivated by a desire to make it tougher to vote. I don't make any bones about it. I think it's voter suppression. It's clear and simple. It's part of a nationwide agenda and set of tactics that's being used in state after state after state, all with the same goal to try to make it tougher to vote. And that is not in the interest of the residents of Cuyahoga County. When it's been tough to vote, like it was back, let's say, in the 2004 presidential election, that affected places like Cuyahoga County and Columbus and Cincinnati, big urban centers in particular. And I think the legislature, I think Governor Kasich knows that. I think that's why they passed House Bill 194 way back when. I think that's why the governor signed it back then. So I think it's politically motivated. It's not in the best interest of voters. We ought to be looking at ways to make it easier to vote. We ought to be looking at ways to make the exercising your franchise more accessible, not less accessible. And they ought to be ashamed of themselves for every single session of the legislature trying to figure out a way to chip away at it. And the governor ought to just do the right thing and veto it. Say, look, go back to work focusing on creating jobs. Stop wasting our time trying to figure out ways to change the rules. This is the second time in recent months they try to change the rules to make it tougher for libertarians or independent candidates to get on the ballot. They have the gall to do that right in the middle of the election season and then have that thrown out by federal court. So they've got a really sorry history when it comes to this, and this is just the latest chapter.
When you're talking about restrictions, are you focused on the absentee ballot applications specifically and who can mail them, or is there something
I think
else?
that's part of it, but I think restricting the day, the so-called golden week or golden days of voting is another aspect of it. I don't know what problem this is allegedly solving. I think Secretary Husted has basically said that voter fraud is not a particular issue in this state, And so I'm not sure what they're solving. Actually, I think I know what they're solving. What they're solving is they want to try to make it tougher for certain folks to vote in this state, and everybody sees through it. Everybody sees through it. Nobody's fooled by this.
Do you support online voter registration?
I do. If it can be done in a way, that totally guarantees, the veracity of the information. I mean, you have to have a very robust system to make sure that that can happen. But I think is it technologically possible? Yes, I'd like to see something like that at some point.
Can you tell us why the campaign decided